what makes me smarter, what makes me wiser, what makes me mentally tougher? How do I get stronger? How do I make my brain stronger? So we know how to make the human body stronger. If you overload your muscles and bones, they have to get stronger because you force them to. If you overload your cardiovascular and respiratory system, you have to get fitter because you force them to. But what about the brain? How does the brain get tougher and stronger? And the reason I ask the question is we seem to live in a world now where there's a lot of mental health challenges, weak brains, mentally weak people. I can't do it, it's too hard, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I don't want to do it. How do you get your brain stimulated so that you go and do the things that you're excited about doing? Or how do you get excited so that you want to go and do stuff? And because I study the human brain every day, I find this really fascinating. And it's interesting because the brain specialists often disagree. The neuroscientists, the psychologists and psychiatrists, those experts often disagree. But one thing they don't disagree about is that if you overload your brain, if you put it under pressure, it is forced to get stronger. So if you do, for example, if you do puzzles or if you challenge your brain to think differently, neuroplasticity exists. So you can change the connections inside your brain. Your brain is plastic, it can change. But we also have neurogenesis, which is creating new brain cells. So how do you do that? And if you need to be tougher and stronger and wiser mentally, you can do it, but you have to force your brain to do it. So how do you do that? And is it just using your brain? Now, the coolest thing ever is that the human body and brain are connected, obviously. And if I force my body to get fitter and stronger, my own muscles everything we do is controlled by muscle contraction, by using your muscles. So everything you do sends a message back to your brain. It's a hormonal response to using your muscles. A myokine, which is the hormonal response, sends a message back to your brain to say, we just got overloaded, we got puffed, we lifted heavy, we fought, we kicked, we punched, we did something physical, we have to be better for next time. And of course that makes sense because the fight and flight system, so if you have to fight to overcome a challenge, if you have to run away from a challenge, then you have to get better for next time because your own body says to your brain, if we are forced, muscles and bones and heart and lungs, to run away next time, what if the animal's bigger? What if the threat's tougher? What if we have to fight harder? We have to be better next time, which makes sense because that's how we get fitter and stronger, isn't it? Our own muscles send a message back to the brain to say we have to be better for next time. So is it possible that we've become weak as a human race because we've become physically inactive? Everything we do is to create an easier path. And the interesting thing there is when you're really tough and really strong mentally, you create better ways to do things. But as humans, we've created better ways to do things, which means we don't move as much anymore. So we've created cars and planes and spaceships and ways to get around that mean we don't have to walk or use our own body to get around. We don't have to fight threats anymore because we whinge, moan and complain about them usually rather than doing something to become tougher and stronger to overcome the threat. So we don't call our boss and say, you've put me under stress. We send a text message or we send an email or we just whinge, moan and complain to our friends and family. We don't actually do anything about that particular threat. So what if we, as adults, and I always say put on your big girl pants, Rowie, and handle this situation mentally and physically so that you do get tougher and stronger mentally and physically, which is why every single day I put my body under pressure. I get puffed, I lift heavy, I do hard stuff so that my body stays strong, which then sends a message to my brain for my brain to stay strong. But to use your brain is important, of course, also. So you have to learn, and that's one of my biggest reasons for wanting to learn every day. The reason I'm studying the human brain, and I've made a commitment, as I share all the time, a minimum of a 2-hour commitment every day to learning, so that I'm constantly putting my brain under pressure. Now, the interesting and sad thing is if you don't use your brain, it wastes away. That's called Alzheimer's and dementia. There's some really interesting brain scans, some CAT scans, to show that if you become inactive, so if you become overweight and don't move around as much as you used to, if you become an inactive human being, so you're unfit, weak and frail, your brain wastes away because those messages from your muscles aren't being sent back to your brain. A really interesting example of that is the koala bear from Australia. It has a smaller brain than it used to because it's decided to sit in a tree and eat eucalyptus leaves and not travel around much anymore. It's become inactive. So a koala's brain has gotten smaller. The people who are very interested in the brain and how it actually works, the neuroscientists that study the brain via CAT scans, have said that the same thing happens to the human brain. If you stop moving around, the purpose for the human brain is to make sure that we survive, that we feel good so we can thrive and reproduce. But if you don't feel good, so you're not reproducing, and you don't feel good because you're not moving around, that's a very interesting cycle. Then of course the brain rots away. If you don't use it, you lose it. I don't want that to happen to my brain. How about you? And I always share this because I had a very smart father whose brain rotted away. He died of Alzheimer's. He died of dementia. His brain rotted away, and I don't believe that needed to happen, and I now know that it didn't need to happen. If he kept stimulating his brain rather than you've got this diagnosis, so your brain's rotting away, there's nothing you can do about it, which is what he was told, that's not true. You don't have to let your brain rot away, the same as you don't have to let your body rot away. So I'm always out in the fresh air and sunshine. I'm always pushing my heart and lungs to get fitter. I'm pushing my muscles and bones to get stronger. And I'm constantly putting my brain under pressure, constantly learning so that I can become more creative. I can think differently. I can be a critical thinker. Now that's how I want to live my life. How about you? I don't want to get fat, weak, old and frail and my brain rots away. And the only way to stop that from happening is to stay physically and mentally strong, physically and mentally fit, and work really hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. So work physically hard and mentally hard. And then you can stay young and you can stay fit and you can stay strong regardless of how old you are. Wouldn't that be awesome? Live your life to the max. Woohoo! Healthy, fit, strong brain.